Welcome to season two of the Happy Sensory Corner podcast at Mendability. We want to help everyone, especially when they're vulnerable, to feel happier, more comfortable in their own skin, more confident, so that they can be their true selves and we can all journey together through life more happily. Our contribution is to work on brain health. As our brains grow stronger and healthier, all of us benefit, but especially those among us who struggle to sleep, who are overwhelmed by the barrage of information from the environment, who struggle with their bodies, with abstractions. So we developed a gentle, family-centered program of whole brain games that boosts brain development and activates the brain's self-healing mechanisms. It is based on the neuroscience field of environmental enrichment, and we call it sensory enrichment. And so we're experts in boosting brain development, but we're not experts in everything that the families have to navigate. For example, we're not experts in what to eat or physical activity, advocacy, education, job training, recreation, travel, caregiver support, mindfulness. And so today I'm excited to introduce you to Dara Erck. Dara is the founder of SAM+LEO and a single mom to two teenagers. She's got 20 years of experience working in global health. And she noticed there were health products for kids and for adults, but nothing for teens. And this led her to create SAM+LEO with products like the Energy Gummy Vitamins and Eyes Plus Gummies, offering healthy alternatives for teens. Dara is all about building supportive communities and sharing practical tips for parents. And so we're lucky to have her here to share her insights on teen health and wellness. Thank you for being on our podcast today, Dara.
Thanks for having me.
Um, what I like to start with, you know, the journey, how you got to where you're at. Is there a story with little Dara, that would explain your inclination for solving problems for teenagers? Was there an experience that led you to where you're at today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say not so much with the teenagers, but more an impact and supporting communities, vulnerable populations. My work in global health, my whole career has been focused on supporting global health initiatives, and this just happened to fall in my lap with navigating my own kids' mental health challenges and experiences, the pandemic, and then noticing there was just a gap in the market for products that I needed to support my own teens.
And what, based on your experience, then, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing teen health?
Yeah. So one of the things I like to talk about and is this mental health awareness is amazing that we're starting to talk more about it and be more open and vulnerable about it, but it's really a catch-all for so many different issues. We have learning challenges, we have anxiety, depression, bullying, substance abuse, like all of it gets put under one umbrella of mental health, and each one of those is very unique and different and requires different support mechanisms. So I think first being able to talk about it and search for the support we need is really challenging. So that's one initiative. But the other is just raising awareness and so that parents don't feel so alone in navigating supporting our kids.
So you're seeing parents feeling, I've heard, there was, and so you're saying there still is a stigma associated with mental wellness.
I think we can all agree that probably yes, and depending on feeling safe talking to different people, we've made huge strides, but I would say there's still a stigma. But also, it's just so vast. Like, where do you turn? Even if you're willing to talk about it, depending on where you live, do you have access to services in your community, in your culturally? Are you okay talking about it with your family and friends? Like, there's a lot of layers to that. And as we start to peel back some of those, it gets better and more easier to navigate, but there's still a long way to go.
So what is a better way in your mind to address wellness. I'm thinking a word, maybe we need to find different ways of naming things.
Yeah.
In the last 10, 20 years, we've renamed almost everything. And so I'm wondering if mental health is the last bastion of, or the last symbol of an old stigma that needs to, have you got better words? Or is this what's needed?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have better words. But when your first questions was what is needed, I would say it's definitely more school support and school location. Even earlier on, having one school psychologist or one school therapist is like not enough for what I'm seeing in our school populations and even in our curriculum. And so being able to give our kids the tools like you're creating and what you've been working on in different environments, whether it's school, socially outside of school, that's a huge first step, because we want to get it before it's a crisis, right? Before there's an issue that kids
So
start
why
to feel that.
school?
Uh, because I think we're holding kids' attention, and I think we're asking them to step into higher levels of functioning without the support they need to be successful, whether it's academic or sports or social. All three of those require a lot more navigation, especially with social media, especially with other societal pressures. And then we're not giving them the tools to navigate the pressures we're putting on them.
I can totally see the school as you know, it's outside of the home. But they're there 6, 7, 8 hours. And there's a lot of specialists and professionals who can observe the kids and say and be very useful. That makes a lot of sense. But on the other side, I'm thinking about the special education leaders that are, listening to us today and thinking, oh, one more thing that, falls on our lap. Why do you think schools is a better place than the home?
So I don't know if it's a better place. I think it's a needed place in addition maybe to the home. But for
Mm,
example, teachers don't have the training to navigate a lot of the complex issues their students have beyond academics. And so I think it actually makes their lives easier if they both had the training and tools to support the kids, and then the kids had the tools they needed to navigate some of the big emotions or feelings they're having and make that learning more accessible to them. And so I actually think that putting the effort and work in will make everyone's lives easier in the long run. Um,
mm.
that's my take on it, but I don't think it's an either or. I think it's more holistic.
So more, yeah, you're saying one psychologist in the whole school might not be enough. Is a psychologist the best person to address mental health?
Such a good question. I'm not sure that's the right answer either.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
team
I'm
effort.
brainstorming. This is not the initial direction I had in
Yeah.
mind for our
But it's
episode. I wanted to,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's necessarily the right answer, but they are tasked with a lot of the IEPs and a lot of the oversight of kids once it gets to crisis or in that situation. And so it's not fair to put all of that on one person when it's in that crisis, right? It's more, it'll be better served, the community be better served if it's spread across the whole school community, I think. And oftentimes you find it in the most unexpected places, the school coach, the cafeteria person,
Mm.
the support staff, the front office staff. Like there's often people with those skill sets throughout the school who actually have more close contact to students and maybe aren't leveraged in that way.
In your experience, looking at teen health specifically, have you seen some really cool, innovative approaches?
Yes, for sure. Not always in the public school setting, unfortunately. So I see a lot more when there's availability to have more access to outdoor education, movement, pauses in work. And so when I've seen that happen in my own kids' education, we see a lot better outcomes and a lot better
Well,
access
I'm
to learning.
thinking I want that at work. More
Exactly.
breaks, more movement, and outdoors. So many studies showing that spending time outside is could be the single most effective change you can make to your lifestyle that would
Yeah.
have an impact on mental health, physical health. There was one cool study, I can't remember what it was, and I remember it was a study and I remember reading it. I just don't remember where, but they were talking about the quality of the light that's outside, especially in the mornings and the evenings, that trigger the mechanism that basically help regulate your circadian cycle. And so, being getting to ready to digest, getting ready to sleep, getting ready to have the right adrenaline at the right points of the day, all of those things are on a clock. And then you can time that clock and help regulate that clock just by being exposed to the right kind of light at the right time of day. And it's like, oh, it's so amazing that, of course, through thousands and thousands of years of adaptation, we would have this synergy and symbiosis with sunlight and the quality of the sunlight.
Yes.
So yes, okay, all right. So where do you fit in? Like you saw a gap. So it does Sam and Leo say go outside?
Well, let's start yeah, let's take it back a step. So what I've developed are a line of 5 gummy vitamins in the functional space for teens because, well, first of all, they're safe for age 4 and older, but specifically addressing teens because there were none on the market. You walk down any vitamin aisle, like you said, and there's kids and adults, no teens. 85% of teens don't take a vitamin. So starting there and thinking about one, it can be a tool for discussion with parents because usually it's parents offering it. So you're able to talk about sleep hygiene, energy levels, screen time, immunity, stress levels. They open a door for conversation. They taste good. But then it also starts to develop kids and teens awareness of their own body and how their bodies feel. So my kids, for example, are able to say, I'm feeling low energy, might need some energy gummies or that are just B complex, no caffeine, or I'm feeling tired, or I'm kind of overstimulated. Maybe I need something gentle to help me go to sleep tonight. Our kids are being bombarded with a lot of unhealthy options like vaping, energy drinks, screen time. And so this was one solution for that. My interest in the brand is definitely more from the community building, awareness raising, access to care, impact, giving back to nonprofits working in teen mental health.
Hmm.
The vitamins are a product and a conduit for that, but it's a bigger initiative than just the vitamins.
What's I want to ask you, okay. The big question I have I want to ask you, and I'm trying to lead to it, but you've got this screen time is a big deal, especially for our parents who have kids on the spectrum where there's so little in terms of, I want to say entertainment, but the kids with autism often feel very uncomfortable a lot of the time. And for a lot of those kids, screen time offers a controlled environment that they can control, and they have this sense of it's a comfortable place for them to be. And so, you want to spend a lot of time in this place where you're comfortable, but it's a bit of a controversial topic. Some people say, don't worry so much. There's so much you can learn. You can leverage the power of those tablets, and then some other people that believe that some of the symptoms are actually related to the amount of time you spend on the screen. The clinical evidence is not conclusive either way, but it's a thing, right? It's a big thing. And
Yeah.
so I you have those gummies for teen eye health. And I was like, okay, this is something I want to talk about
Yep.
because so tell us a little bit about that.
So, first, as the product, it's been around forever. It's lutein, and it's come as a capsule forever. Ophthalmologists will recommend it for macular strength, the muscles around your eye health. So it's nothing new. But it's never been accessible or available as a gummy or a form for kids. So that's one. There are more and more studies coming out. There's probably not enough data or as much data as I would like, but there are studies showing that it does support blue light blocking, screen fatigue, eye fatigue. So helping strengthen the muscles from eye fatigue. So that's the product, and it tastes good. Where it comes into like how much screen time and navigating screen time, I don't take a position on that. I know what works for my kids. I will say it is, like I mentioned, a tool for discussion in your family or with your clinical practitioners about how you want to navigate screen time with your child or the child that you have. That's one thing. The other thing I particularly find with screen time and the difference of it as a therapeutic tool or helpful tool or how it's calming in a difference from scrolling. And one of the issues I see with my kids and the newer technologies is this constant, like, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, like scrolling to the next feature. And there's not a pause, there's not a waiting to consume the information or digest it or have it as an entertainment. It's like the scrolling. And that's the part that concerns me because it's an attention span issue. It's quick, a quick it's the word I'm looking for, like a feedback of like, okay, feels good, doesn't feel good, and kind of keep scrolling. And so they don't hold attention as long. That's the one part with screen time that I'm more particular about. It's not so much the hours or what they're watching or how they're watching it, whether it's a phone or a tablet or whatever. But the scrolling part, I definitely see as anxiety producing, stress producing, and impacting attention.
So interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anything discuss this idea that scrolling as the tablet experience was something to think about specifically. And so how do the gummies help with that? Is it
The gummies don't
muscle
help
str
with, yeah, there's nothing that the eye gummy has nothing to do with focus necessarily. It's just about
Gotcha.
the muscle strength and eyes and being aware and maybe it's the tool for conversation in your family of how you handle screen time. So a lot of the purpose of the gummies is also conversation with your child and your family of how you're dealing with different things. And so you can talk about screen time. And so for I have two very different children. One has a phone, one does not have a phone, and partly because of how it made them feel. And maybe we can assess that every 6 months or every year, but a, it's enabled us to have those conversations in our family.
Yeah, conversations. The kid who doesn't have a phone, how is he handling not having a phone when his sibling has one?
Yeah. It's been controversial. So he's 14. He has a watch, and so that's been a tool for texting or tracking or map or whatever he needs on that spot, or even phone calls. And he has his peer group also doesn't have phones, so that's been helpful that the friends don't have phones. Um, I think he is aware that it was causing anxiety and stress. And so for the most part, like he has a gaming computer, he has TV, he just doesn't have that scrolling device on his phone.
Mm.
And I think we'll revisit that within the year or 2 years to see as he develops. I would say 90% of the time he's fine with it. There's once in a while where he does get frustrated, like, this isn't fair. My brother has one, or I can't,
Being able to take pictures or yeah, I can see the one, couple of things that phones are really good at that would be really that he would miss. I
yeah.
know all the kids are taking selfies and stuff like that. And
That's the thing is that his peer group didn't have them as either. I think it's easier when the friends don't have them at the
mm.
same age. That would be a lot harder. If he was the only one that didn't have it, I think it would be a lot harder.
So how come the other sibling has a phone?
So they both had phones. One got taken away. So it kind of was a progression. The older one is 16, driving. He actually is a pilot. He flies planes and handles it kind of differently. Perhaps if I were to go back in time, I may have waited longer with him as well. But given where we are right now, it's not as huge of a problem.
Yep, I hear you. Um, and so I'd like to talk a little bit about communities, supportive communities now. You know, there's this group of kids whose parents were involved, I imagine, in the process of let's get together and let's support, let's have a group of kids that don't have phones. What came first? Your kid not having a phone or the group not having phones?
So we're in an interesting situation. He switched schools in January of this year and went to this new school that is, like I was mentioning, dreamy in the sense of outdoor education, movement,
Mm.
step-based. So it's a very special environment. And the cohort he walked into already did not have phones. And so
Is it okay to mention the name of the school in this podcast for those
happily,
parents who are like dying, like, I
yeah.
want that school?
I'm happy to share. So it's called World Mind. It's in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
He was, and you can look it up, and I love these type of schools. He was in a similar school in New York City called Lang, Lang, and because of COVID, we moved. And it's very similar to the Bridges Academy in California and LA that I think there's even a documentary about. And so um, there are resources on those school sites too, if you don't live near those schools, to get some of the same sort of resources. But it's a lot about a lot of kids are on the spectrum in these schools. There's a lot of kids with school trauma who've not done well in other school settings and having to kind of refigure out how they are in a school-based setting. Um, so he walked into this cohort that these kids already did not have phones.
Ah,
And
yes.
he had it, I would say he had it from January to April. And then it was quite clear that it was not serving anybody. And so then we said, oh, these people don't have phones. You know, let's see how this goes.
You talk a lot about this creates conversations, this leads to conversations, and we've had conversations. And how do you get to a point where teens have conversations? Do you have some tips for us parents?
Yeah. Um, I wish I had the magic bullet or the timing. I will say I am a big fan of car rides and walks. So either side by side where you're not looking at each other, or in a car, or walking where you're like the movement is actually helping facilitate the conversation. So those are just my two biggest tips. And then in terms of conversation, when and how, definitely not in the chaotic upset moment, right? In the calm moment when they're available and open for those conversations. I'm also in a different position where I am a single parent and co-parenting. Luckily, I do co-parent well with my kid's father. But I think that's could be another point of tension when you're not on the same page as a co-parent with these, because one person may say yes, he should have a phone, and one person say no, he should not have a phone, and so that,
Oof.
yeah. Um,
Yes, yes. Let's make sure that we're on the same page. I like
page.
what you said about going on rides or on walks. I know that some of the best conversations, heart to hearts, I've had were taking go on a car ride, but the car ride always had a purpose. It was never we need to talk, let's go in the car.
Yes, yes.
It was like, hey, we're in a car, you know, start a conversation. At first, I did not leverage that very well.
Mhm.
It's when my wife said, "Hey, I've had some really good chats because we always had kids who had to be taken somewhere, and it was pretty long drive, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and it was frequent. And when it was my turn to do those drives, I sometimes just would listen to music and chill. Um, but then I became more intentional. It's like, oh, I want to ask this question. I'll wait for the next car ride.
Yeah,
And it always worked really well. Now we got a dog, and the dog was mostly, I'm going to say, so that the kids would have to get out of the house every day and go for walks. And now it's like, well, let's go on the walk with them, right?
that
Now
started
we
for us too. Yeah.
And yeah, it definitely worked. I knew there was something. Have you read into this? Do you know why not looking at each other is better for having heart to heart than, sitting
Yeah,
down on the couch?
I have not read into it. I've heard it other places. I've also heard the other one I've heard is bedtime. For some reason, kids always want to talk at bedtime. And the other advice I've gotten there is it's when you're most tired and maybe your kids start to go to bed later than you, and you're like, this is the last time point of my day that I am available to talk to you. But actually, it's kind of important. And so you have to just be available for those.
Yes, yes. I'm thinking, okay, yet another, and it's when you mentioned it that I realized some of the most magical times we've had was uh, jumping into bed together and watching a show that they choose.
Yes. Hmm.
And sometimes I watch the shows that they choose to watch. It's not the show that I would watch because there's a whole bunch of jumping into each other's beds and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. But then you say, well, okay, let's lean into this. I wouldn't do that. You know, you can and just lean into the cringe factor
Yes.
and say why this and what would you do and but not in a judgmental way, sort of hey, I had not thought of this, or that makes me think of this, or that makes me think no, because you know, your mother and I we prefer it this way, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah,
The
no,
other
that's
one I would add is more recently discovered this in the last probably 6 months in the car is um, news channels and the news highlights or summaries. We happen to listen to the NPR 5 minute, but choose your news station, and that 5 minutes is like what's happening in the world beyond their world, right? What's happening makes them be a little bit less selfish in their own world, right? And hear about either suffering or joy that's happening in the world. It's 5 minutes. And I've noticed that it actually calms everyone in the car listening to it and either leads to some other kind of conversation or question about what's happening in the world. So we're having like something intellectual happening, or they're more open and vulnerable to talking. Or it just is kind of leads into music or something else, but it's really been, I haven't quite put my finger on it, but it's been really helpful.
I'm loving all of this. And I like what you introduced with the news because then it gives us something to talk about that doesn't have to be personal.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah,
Let's talk about somebody else's problems for once.
exactly.
Like, oh, let's rejoice that we don't have to deal with this crap over there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. I'm so glad we share those tips. So how has your personal experience as a single mom influenced your approach to building these communities and supporting other parents? Because I know we have a whole bunch of single moms on the call, or maybe moms
Mhm.
who feel like they're single, you know.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with a dad who likes to talk to other dads and felt like there was a big gap in the dad space. And he said dads struggle when there's a high need in the family because the moms kind of take charge and take over, and so the dads are like, well, I'm less familiar, I don't know how to do this, I want to fix but I'm not very good nurturing. So there's some confusion sometimes, and out of that confusion, because of the lack of clarity in their role, they sort of revert to you know, maybe spending more time at work so that they can provide the extra money so that the mom can do what she's best. But it's so there's lots of things there anyway.
Yes. There's a lot
So, so mom, what do you do because you're single that maybe is different, or what has
there.
that taught you that drives you to do things a bit differently?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a journey. I definitely, like I said before, I am grateful that my ex and I are on the same page for the most part with co-parenting. Although, I still don't have a window into what happens for half the time of my kids being away from me. So that's probably the biggest struggle is, I, I don't get to see that. I get what I get when they land in my door. And so then just being kind of open to greeting what I get. Because I don't know always what I'm receiving, and then giving myself a lot of self-compassion in that because I want to fix, like you said, as a parent, I want to jump in, I want to make it all better, and I just can't do all of that. And so it's just having the space, and then leaning into my own communities, friends, and asking for help when I need it or asking to connect because I can feel very alone a lot of time. Once as a startup solo founder and as a single parent, both of those worlds are very lonely. And so making sure that my kids don't sense that from me because our kids are so responsive and they were very sensitive to knowing are our parents okay, right? We don't want them to take care of us. And so I'm also sensitive that I want them to have compassion for other people, but not have to be responsible for me. So that's something I'm aware of. And then they're getting older. Like this would be very different if they were 5, 6, 7. They're 14 and 16, having their own lives, thinking about where they're going off in their career. And so some of it is they could be in my home and I don't see them. Like they just like that I'm in the kitchen making dinner. They are up in their rooms or out with their friends or doing stuff, but they just want me around and not necessarily interacting all the time. And so that's a new place to be too. So it's less of the like tying shoes and making lunches and making sure everyone's ready to go and just being around.
I'm seeing the cool gaming chair that you're sitting in, and I'm hearing you talk about your kids being older and stuff like that. Is this part of being the cool mom that you have the cool chair?
I wish I just moved into a new house and I don't have a desk chair yet, so I took one of theirs. And this is actually the first podcast I've received recorded in the new home. So probably the next one I'll have a regular desk chair.
Oh, wow, I was thinking maybe you could lean into this.
It's a cool
Um,
desk.
but this is so all this, good intentional things you're doing, being proactive to have those conversations with your children and being, part of their lives and getting them to want to talk to you. I thought that the chair was part of the effort of you being sort of part of
Lean
their
into it.
world.
Yeah.
But what do you do when, uh, how to say this? You must have had resistance, or let's say you've had. Okay, let's back up a little bit. You've introduced things into their lives, right? For example, this idea of, okay, well, let's remove the phone to make sure that that you don't do things that are damaging to your health. You seem to be more sensitive to this. So how do you have some strategies? Do you have some tips for us parents who are trying also to bring things into their lives that are going to improve their lives? Maybe some interventions or maybe
Mm.
removing things. What strategies do you have that you found the most effective? Do you have like a cool story of something you thought was going to go bad and it turned out to be okay? Or what's the thing you've learned from all the failures you've had?
Yeah. Well, I probably have a lot of those. And I guess me taking a step back, on our conversation, it probably sounds like I have all my ducks in a row and I know how to parent. And that is very much not the case. And things definitely go awry in my life all of the time. I would say one of the hardest things and things I've had to learn is not fixing things and not reassuring all the time. So, in particular, one of my sons has OCD. And the worst thing you can do is constantly assure because they're coming to you to check. Am I going to be okay? Is this okay? Did I do this wrong? Did I mess this up? Did I jinx this? Things like that. And you so want to say it's fine. Of course it's fine. Or you're going to be fine. Or do it this way. And that makes it worse because then the session finds a home somewhere else. And to be able to say, I don't know, you might be okay, you might not be okay, or it might work out, it might not work out. You might fail this test, you might totally succeed. And that's a really hard thing for me as a parent to have to do. And one thing I wish maybe I had learned that earlier in the journey of OCD. It's also really scary to be in that position to sometimes tell your kid, I don't know if you're going to be okay. I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow. You're not going to, but by telling them everything's okay actually doesn't serve them.
It makes a lot of sense that somebody in that frame of mind would find it very irritating. I think maybe because they feel gaslit a little bit. It's like you're not acknowledging the fact that I'm truly fearful that this is going to happen. And if you say, no, it's going to be fine, and you're basically telling them that that you're not understanding them, you're not on the same page as them, you don't empathize with them.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of all the kids that, the parents who are listening to us, a lot of them have kids on the spectrum, and they have feelings that we don't understand. They say things and they do things that we don't understand. And instead of correcting them and rectifying them and bringing and normalizing the feelings, normalizing the behavior is a way of gaslighting them, saying, no, I don't, I don't like what you're doing. I think you're wrong. Or I think, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Have you had your kids express that to you? Stop saying that, mom. It makes me feel this way. Or thank you for doing this because now I feel this way.
Mm, I definitely have gotten like, don't say this, or, that doesn't help me. I have I think what's hardest is that he says he wants us to reassure him. Is asking for that reassurance, but really he's not doesn't want it. And so that's the because also you're not always in the like available frame of mind to realize that's what he's doing. Like you're making dinner, you're getting ready to leave the house, and you're like, wait, that's not what's happening right now. Right now, you're supposed to pause and say something different, and it's not your natural go-to, and it's not your so it's the hardest part is when you're in the busy everyday life trying to implement some of those things. That's the hardest. When you're being mindful and you're available and you're lying in bed and having those conversations, that's when it's a little easier.
Hmm.
But it's in the hustle and bustle of every day that it's a lot harder because it's not your go-to. And then I think it's maybe not how they say it, but their actions. So when they come back to you for advice or they want to talk to you about something that's challenging, then that's a hint that you're doing something right because they feel safe to come to talk.
Oh, right. Yes. It is just, I love it when they come to say, "Hey, I was thinking about this. What do you think?" And it's like, "Oh, I don't want to mess this up." And sometimes I'll intentionally say, "I don't know," just to say, I don't know, just to be genuine.
Yeah,
Maybe I have an idea or two, but I feel like saying that I don't know is going to serve the long-term relationship better. And
yeah,
also, it's fine to not know.
exactly. Those are the two things I actually lean into a lot when I talk to other parents that I wish I'd done more of, and I'm always on my journey. One is that perfectionism, like our kids only see us doing everything right, and they rarely see us modeling messing up. And so I've had parents, even with little kids, getting really frustrated. They're, rebuilding a Lego the same way every day to make it right, and getting really frustrated if they don't. And if you take a step back and you think, well, everything around them looks perfect, how do you model like, oh, I cut the carrot wrong, or I spilled the milk, or I dropped the garbage, whatever it is, to be more vocal in modeling that we mess up. Because if you take a step back, they don't see us mess up very much. We cover that for them. And then all they see is this kind of perfect world around them.
And
Um,
apologizing when we mess up in a way that affects them. I have a friend who's going through a very nasty divorce, and the good thing that happened is it brought him back into the family. There was an abusive situation where he didn't realize that the mom was abusing the kids and stuff like that. And he's been really intentional, and he's found himself raising his voice. It's like, oh crap, no, I can't do that because this is a trigger for them because this is how they were treated by their mom. And the apologizing has been better for their relationship. The screwing up and apologizing has been better than not screwing up.
exactly. We call it the repair, right? You can repair what there's always time for repair. And there's no, from what I read, there's no time limit. Like something that happened 5 years ago can still have a repair. You can still say, I'm sorry that happened to you 5 years ago. And just being able to hear that is really helpful. And then the other thing I say a lot in my journey with my kids is that we're not trying to fix them, we're just trying to support them. And our kids, I think, are sensitive that they're going to therapists or this or that or this special help. And then they're constantly thinking something's wrong with them. And like, what's wrong
Hmm.
with me if I need all this help and support and this doctor and that thing? And instead, I've tried to take a step back saying, there's absolutely nothing wrong. You're absolutely perfect. Here's ways to support you and what, tools you need in your life. Because I can only imagine what that might feel like if every day you're feeling like something's wrong with you.
We had some powerful episodes with previous guests on this issue of trauma by doing all the therapies. And the little kids, when they're the most influenceable, are being told, no, 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 this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. They arguably they can't talk, and you're doing lots of things. And so we're trying to help them to develop the speech, we help them to develop the behavior regulation skills. But in the process, we're actually could be doing some more damage that then has to be repaired later or can never be repaired because nobody's ever addressed it. And we as a program have had a learning a moment around that. um, we now require all of our clients to have a third person in the session. So, no, no, we didn't talk too much about what we do, but we have a program of brain stimulation. So we can stimulate a surge of activity and growth in different parts of the brain depending on what the kids need. But we were doing it very much in a parent being the therapist to the kid situation. And so the parents had even less time being just the parent and hanging out. Now the games were designed to trigger activity in the reward center of the brain. So very quickly the exercises feel, when they're done properly, the exercises feel like a good fun time they're having together. But the context of here, you have to do this. The preparation leading to the kid experiencing the good feeling, the thing leading up to that was not less than ideal. But if we have the third person there, then it's everybody taking turns and doing stuff to one another. And now it's a group activity and it loses that therapy context. And I feel like it's probably the biggest bump in a biggest evolution in our program in since it was invented. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Great to
it's
hear.
really cool. So it's very important. Yeah,
Yes.
very important and not often addressed. And often we feel like it's a lesser of two evils, right? And we say, well, this has got to be addressed, dude. We don't know of a better way to address it. It's got side effects, but we have to deal with it. It's like medication. But
Yeah,
so it's really good when we can get rid of the side effects, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Speaking of side effects, going back to the gummies, so you had some and we didn't we ended up not speaking too much about physical health except for the eyes.
Mhm.
What's the gummy that excites you the most? What's the one that's making you the most happy
Mhm.
that you were
Yeah,
able to put it
thank
together?
you. All of them are really making me happy right now. On a side note, we just got into Whole Foods. I think since I spoke to you, that wasn't news, but
Oh, congratulations.
we're the first supplement in the 3 years of this accelerator program that Whole Foods has chosen to support into their whole body section. So they've recognized the need and an absence in their teen line and in the functional space. So I'm super excited to have their support. And so, yeah, coming to Whole Foods soon.
What a big stamp of credibility, eh?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you can find it in Whole Foods.
Yeah, and
That's
they have
awesome.
pretty rigorous requirements for clean
Oh, yeah.
ingredients and all that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's really a nice thing to have. So the one I think I get most excited about is the energy one because I just see these kids bombarded with energy drinks, and then this also the cycle of feeling tired and not getting enough sleep at night, either because of screens or not going to bed on time and sleep hygiene. So the energy gummy is just a B complex, like very simple in that there's no caffeine in it. Tastes really good. Like I said, it's safe for little kids, although no little kid needs an energy gummy. Adults like taking it. You're not going to overdose from it. They don't interact with any of the other gummies in the line. But really, parents haven't been looking for it because what do you give if you're not taking an energy drink or coffee or tea or Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper? Like, you don't think there's an alternative. And so this is really finally an alternative for a natural energy supplement.
That's lovely. Congratulations
Yeah.
again. I feel this is like a good, nice high point to end our episode today. I'm so glad that you came. Everybody, if you want to connect with Dara, there's links in the show notes. I'm going to send an email to everybody who's on our newsletter about this as well. Have a good rest of your week. Have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.